Welcome to the Four Geeks podcast, where we share everything about business, technology, growth marketing, and provide advice on how startups can build their products and predict revenue. Thank you for tuning in. Don't miss our new episodes every week. This podcast is produced by Four Geeks Productions.
All right, everybody, welcome to another deep dive. This time we're going to be tackling something that I think is on everyone's mind, Azure costs, and how to make sure we're not, overspending on Azure. And for this, we have a really cool article from the folks at 4Geeks, so let's jump right in.
Yeah, and I think one of the first things to get out of the way is that a lot of people try to cut costs in Azure without understanding where their money is going.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, how can you really optimize if you don't know what you're optimizing?
Yeah, it's like going to the doctor and saying, I don't feel good. Give me some medicine.
Exactly. So that's where the Azure Cost Management and Billing portal comes in. This portal is really awesome. It gives you this amazing breakdown of all your costs. You can look at it by resource group. You can look at it by service. You can look at it by, individual virtual machines. So you can really get granular and see what's costing you money.
So it's like this X-ray vision into your Azure spending. I like that.
Exactly. And then in addition to just seeing that raw data, they have a super cool tool called Azure Advisor.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this.
Yeah, so Azure Advisor is like this cost optimization detective. It's going through your entire Azure subscription, looking for any areas where you might be overspending or maybe, misconfigured something or just anything that could potentially save you money. And it will flag those and say, hey, you might want to take a look at this.
So it's like a proactive cost-saving tool that's going to highlight these things, even if you don't know to look for them.
Or absolutely. It's like having a consultant sitting on your shoulder, just constantly making sure that you're not, wasting money in Azure. And a lot of people don't even know this, but Azure Advisor also provides recommendations for not just costs, but also performance and security as well.
Oh, that's really cool. So it's like a triple threat. Cost, performance, security. What a great tool.
Yeah, it's really one of the most powerful tools in Azure. And one of the key things that it highlights is this concept of rightsizing.
Okay, rightsizing.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good thing.
It is, and it's something that's often overlooked. So what rightsizing means is making sure that your Azure resources are properly sized for the workloads that they're running. And a lot of times people fall into this trap of over-provisioning.
Okay, I've heard this word. What does that mean? Over-provisioning.
So over-provisioning means basically that you're allocating more resources than you actually need.
Well,
So let's say you spin up a virtual machine and you choose like the biggest, most powerful virtual machine because you want to make sure it has enough horsepower.
right. You don't want it to be slow.
Exactly. But what happens is a lot of times those virtual machines are sitting there idle. They're not actually using all that power.
So you're paying for this like supercar that's just sitting in the garage.
Exactly. It's like you're paying for all this extra capacity that you're not even using. So Azure Advisor will actually flag these instances and say, hey, you've got this virtual machine that's really oversized. You could probably downsize this to a smaller VM and save a bunch of money.
Okay, so it's going to highlight these things that we might not even be thinking about or realizing are an issue.
Absolutely. And then in addition to right-sizing VMs, Azure Advisor can also help you optimize other resources like storage accounts. For example, you might have a storage account that's configured for premium storage, but you're storing data that doesn't actually need that level of performance.
So it's going to look at all of these different aspects of Azure and just kind of give us these tips like, hey, maybe tweak this or maybe look at this or consider this.
Exactly. And one of the best things about Azure Advisor is that it's constantly running in the background. So it's continuously analyzing your Azure environment and looking for new opportunities to save money.
So it's like our personal cost optimization watchdog.
Yeah.
Just making sure that we're not leaving any money on the table.
And one of the things that we can do proactively is look at reserved instances.
Okay, reserved instances. This was something that was in the 4Geeks article, and they seem pretty excited about this.
Yeah, so reserved instances are a way to significantly reduce your Azure costs, but they do require a little bit of upfront commitment.
So it's not something you just kind of turn on.
It's not a toggle switch, no. So the way reserved instances work is you basically commit to using a certain amount of Azure resources for a 1 or 3 year term. So let's say you know that you're going to need a certain number of virtual machines running 24/7 for the next year.
You've got that steady workload.
You got that steady workload. You can purchase a reserved instance for those virtual machines.
And you're basically getting a discount for that commitment.
Exactly. So by committing to that usage up front, you can get a significant discount. And Microsoft has actually done studies that show you can save up to 72% on certain resources, like SQL databases, if you use reserved instances.
Wow, 72%. That's like a massive discount.
Yeah.
So I could see why the 4Gigs folks were excited about this.
Yeah, and it's something that any organization that's serious about optimizing their Azure costs should definitely be looking into.
Okay, that's a really good point. So we talked about this portal, Azure Cost Management Billing. We've got Azure Advisor, our little cost optimization watchdog. And now we've got reserved instances that are like these bulk discounts. Anything else we can do to kind of keep those costs down?
Well, one of the biggest areas for potential cost savings is storage.
Oh, storage. Yeah, I mean, everybody's got tons of data. It seems like the amount of data that we're generating just keeps growing exponentially. So I can see how this could be a major cost factor.
Yeah, so Azure offers a ton of different storage options, and it's important to choose the right storage option for your specific needs. So, for example, if you're storing a lot of unstructured data like backups or media files,
Or cat video.
or cat videos, exactly, you probably don't need the most expensive high-performance storage option. You can probably use something like Azure Blob Storage, which is a very cost-effective way to store large amounts of data.
Okay, so choose the right storage option. Don't just automatically go for the most expensive thing.
Exactly. And then another thing you can do is implement what's called a data lifecycle management policy.
Okay, what is that?
So this is basically a set of rules that you define that will automatically move your data between different storage tiers based on how frequently it's accessed. So let's say you have some data that's really important and you need to access it frequently. You would keep that on the hot storage tier, which is the most expensive, but also the highest performance.
Okay, that's for that mission critical stuff.
Exactly. But then let's say you have some data that you only need to access once a month or maybe even once a year.
Like those old family photos.
Exactly. You can move that data to the cool storage tier, which is less expensive.
So we're basically creating this hierarchy of data based on how important it is and how often we need to access it.
Exactly. And then for data that you rarely need to access but you still want to keep, just in case, you can move that to the archive tier, which is the least expensive.
That's really smart. So it's like a digital spring cleaning. We're getting rid of all that clutter and we're putting things in their proper place.
And you can even automate this entire process with Azure Data Lifecycle Management. You can set up policies that will automatically move data between different tiers based on certain criteria.
That's amazing. It's like having a self-organizing storage system. I love it.
And that can save you a ton of money because you're not paying for expensive storage for data that you're not even accessing.
Awesome. So we're not just like throwing everything into one big storage bucket and hoping for the best. We're really being strategic about how we're storing our data.
Exactly. And all of these tools that we've been talking about are really easy to use. So there's no excuse not to be optimizing your Azure costs.
I love how all these tools are integrated into Azure. It makes it so much easier to manage everything in one place.
So yeah, definitely take advantage of these tools there that'll help you save money.
Well, this has been awesome. We've covered so much ground already.
Yeah, we've just scratched the surface, but I think this gives people a good foundation to start thinking about how to optimize their Azure costs.
Right, it's a lot to digest. So I think before we take a break, I want to leave our listeners with a thought to ponder. Imagine if you had a crystal ball that could predict your future Azure spending patterns with pinpoint accuracy. What decisions would you make differently today based on that knowledge? We'll delve into some of these more advanced cost optimization strategies when we return for part 2 of our deep dive. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all had a chance to gaze into that crystal ball and maybe get a glimpse of your future Azure spending.
Yeah, that crystal ball would definitely come in handy, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. But even without a crystal ball, there are things that we can do to get a better handle on those costs. And I know the 4 Geeks article mentioned something called FinOps.
Yeah, FinOps, that's kind of a buzzword these days, isn't it?
It is, but it seems like a really important concept. So break it down for me. What is FinOps?
Yeah, so at its core, FinOps is basically a cultural shift.
Okay, a cultural shift. How
Dude,
so?
it's about bringing together the worlds of technology, finance, and business to collaborate on cloud spending decisions.
So it's not just the IT department's problem anymore.
Exactly. It's about breaking down those silos and making everyone accountable for cloud costs.
I like that shared responsibility.
Yeah. And it's about using data to make informed decisions about cloud spending.
Okay, so data-driven cloud spending decisions.
Exactly. And there's this organization called the FinOps Foundation that's kind of leading the charge on this.
Okay, a FinOps foundation, what do they do?
They provide a framework for implementing FinOps.
So it's not just like this vague concept. There's an actual structure to it.
Exactly. They have this maturity model that outlines different stages of FinOps adoption.
So like crawling, walking, running.
Exactly. And it helps organizations assess where they are on that journey and what steps they need to take to mature their FinOps practices.
So it's like a roadmap for FinOps success.
Right. And one of the key things that they emphasize is centralized cloud cost reporting.
Okay, centralized reporting. What does that mean?
It means having a single source of truth for all your cloud spending data.
So no more like spreadsheets flying around different departments.
Exactly. Everyone is looking at the same data, so you can make informed decisions about where to optimize.
That makes sense, having that single pane of glass.
Right. And then once you have that visibility, you can start implementing automated cost optimization measures.
Okay, automation, we love automation.
Right. So we talked about Azure Advisor earlier, but you can take it a step further and actually automate some of those recommendations.
So instead of just getting alerts, we can actually have Azure take action based on those alerts.
Exactly. And there are a lot of third-party tools out there that can help you with this as well.
So like a whole ecosystem of cost optimization tools.
Exactly. And automation is really key because it frees up your time to focus on more strategic initiatives.
Right. It's like having a team of cost optimization robots working 24/7.
Exactly. And one of the things that those robots can help you with is implementing serverless architectures.
Okay, serverless. That's another one of those buzzwords that gets thrown around a lot.
It is, but it's a really powerful concept.
So demystify it for me. What is serverless?
Basically, serverless means that you're not managing servers anymore.
Okay, so no more patching, no more updates.
Well, you still have to patch and update your code,
Right.
but you're not managing the underlying infrastructure.
So someone else is taking care of all that for me.
Exactly. And you only pay for the compute resources that you actually use.
So it's like paying for electricity only when you're actually using it.
Exactly. And that can lead to significant cost savings, especially if you have workloads that are bursty or unpredictable.
Okay, that makes sense. So for example, if you have a website that gets a lot of traffic during the day, but very little traffic at night.
Right. You wouldn't want to be paying for servers to be running 24/7 when they're only really needed for a few hours a day.
So serverless would be a great fit for that scenario.
Exactly. And there are a lot of different serverless offerings in Azure.
So it's not just like one thing.
Right. You have things like Azure Functions, Azure Logic Apps, Azure Event Grid. There's a whole suite of serverless services.
So it's a whole serverless ecosystem.
It is, and it's constantly evolving.
This is a really exciting area to be watching.
It is, and it's definitely something that any organization that's serious about cloud cost optimization should be exploring.
Absolutely. So we've talked about FinOps, we've talked about serverless. Anything else we should be thinking about as we try to wrangle those Azure costs?
Well, one thing that's often overlooked is the importance of training and education.
Okay, training. Why is that so important?
Because if your team doesn't understand how to properly use and manage Azure resources, they're going to make mistakes that can cost you money.
So it's about empowering your team with the knowledge and skills they need to make smart cloud decisions.
Exactly. And Microsoft offers a ton of great training resources.
So there's really no excuse for not investing in your team's cloud skills.
And training can also help your team stay up to date on the latest Azure features and services, which can lead to even more cost savings.
All about continuous learning and improvement.
Exactly. And another thing that's important is to establish clear cost optimization policies.
Okay, policies. What kind of policies are we talking about?
Things like tagging policies, naming conventions, resource quotas.
So it's about setting those guardrails in place.
Exactly. And enforcing those policies consistently.
So it's not just like a one-time thing, it's an ongoing process.
Exactly. And it's important to get buy-in from your team on these policies.
So it's not just like a top-down mandate.
Right. It's about working together to create a culture of cost optimization.
I love that collaborative approach. So we're talking about training, we're talking about policies, we're talking about automation. It sounds like there's a lot that goes into building a successful cloud cost optimization strategy.
It is. It's a journey, but it's a journey worth taking.
Absolutely. The rewards are significant. So before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a challenge. Think about one concrete action you can take this week to start optimizing your Azure costs. It could be something small, like enabling Azure Advisor or setting up a budget alert. Or it could be something more ambitious, like exploring serverless architectures or implementing a FinOps framework. The important thing is to start taking action today. We'll explore some more advanced cost optimization techniques and real-world case studies in Part 3 of our deep dive. And we are back for the final part of our Azure Cost Optimization deep dive We've covered a lot of ground already. I'm excited to see where we go from here.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of different things, but I think one thing that we haven't really touched on too much is the importance of security.
Okay, security. Now, how does security play into cost optimization?
Well, a lot of people think that security is just an added expense.
Right, it's just another thing you got to pay for.
Right, but actually security can actually help you save money.
Okay, that's interesting. How so?
Well, for one thing, if you have a security breach, that can be incredibly costly.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You've got downtime, you've got data recovery, you've got legal fees.
Exactly. So preventing those breaches in the first place can save you a lot of money down the road.
So it's like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure?
Exactly. And then another thing is that a lot of security best practices can actually lead to more efficient use of resources.
Okay, give me an example.
So let's say you have a virtual machine that's exposed to the public internet,
Okay.
and it's not properly secured.
Oh.
Someone could hack into that virtual machine and use it to mine cryptocurrency.
I know.
And you would end up footing the bill for all that compute time.
So my Azure bill would just skyrocket.
Exactly. But if you had implemented proper security measures like, strong firewall and intrusion detection system,
All the good stuff.
then you could have prevented that attack and saved yourself a lot of money.
So security is not just about protecting your data, it's also about protecting your budget.
Exactly. And then another thing to think about is that a lot of security features in Azure are actually free.
Oh, free? We like free.
Right. So things like Azure Security Center and Azure Sentinel.
I've heard of those.
Yeah, those are really powerful tools that can help you identify and mitigate security risks.
Okay, so we should definitely be taking advantage of those.
Absolutely. And then in addition to those free tools, there are also a lot of paid security solutions that can be really valuable.
Right, but we want to make sure that we're choosing the right solutions for our needs.
Exactly. And that we're not overspending on security.
Right, we want to strike that balance.
Right, and a lot of times you can actually get discounts on security solutions if you bundle them with other Azure services.
Oh, so it pays to shop around.
Exactly. So don't be afraid to negotiate with Microsoft or with third-party vendors.
That's a good tip.
Right.
So I'm starting to see how security is really like this integral part of cloud cost optimization.
It is, and it's something that you should be thinking about from the very beginning.
Right, not just like an afterthought.
Exactly. Security should be baked into your cloud strategy from day one.
And it sounds like there are a lot of great tools and resources available to help us secure our Azure environment effectively.
There are. And the good news is that most of these tools are really easy to use.
So there's no excuse for not being secure.
And Microsoft is constantly adding new security features and capabilities to Azure.
So it's a really exciting area to be watching.
It is. And it's only going to become more important as we move more and more of our workloads to the cloud.
Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive. We've covered so much ground, from the basics of understanding our Azure costs to the importance of things like FinOps, serverless, and security.
It's been a whirlwind tour of Azure cost optimization.
It has. But I feel like we've given our listeners a really solid foundation to start building their own cost optimization strategies.
I hope so. And I think the key takeaway is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right. It's all about finding the right combination of tools and techniques that works for your specific organization.
Exactly. And it's an ongoing journey. The cloud is constantly evolving, so you need to be constantly adapting and refining your approach.
So always be learning, always be optimizing.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment.
Right? Try new things. See what works for you.
And don't forget to share your learnings with others.
Right? The cloud community is all about collaboration and knowledge sharing.
So if you find a great cost optimization tip, share it with the world.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure.
And I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in. I hope you found this helpful and informative.
And remember, cost optimization is a journey, not a destination.
So keep learning, keep experimenting, and keep optimizing. Until next time, happy cloud computing, everyone.
That's all for today. Thank you all for joining us. For more ideas on how to grow your business with marketing and technology on your side, or a recap of our latest episodes, feel free to check out our 4Geeks Global social media. If you need additional help to bring out the best in your business, don't be shy and get in touch with us at 4geeks.io/contact. See you soon with a new episode.